Okay, y'all, I'm back with another video. Option traders need to understand volatility. This is one of the most important subjects, if not the most important subject to my options trading, and let's get right into it. Being unprepared is usually due to a lack of understanding of volatility, impatience, and your favorite internet teachers telling you to just get in where you fit in. It's irresponsible to tell unprepared, unsuspecting new retail traders that time in the market is better than timing the market. That's irresponsible, and it should be reserved for rich people who have the money to blow. Sure, no one can truly time or predict the market or its direction, but we can sure take a risk-aware approach to give ourselves a higher probability of profit or success. The bottom line is volatility affects options prices, so don't jump into a bad deal without knowing when those prices are elevated. And again, I'm not a financial advisor. All of my content is for educational purposes only, and it does not constitute financial recommendations. I'm just sharing what I've done to get a return on my investment. So here we go. Why does volatility affect options prices? Pictured below are probability distribution curves and the standard deviations, which are essentially the amount of variation around a mean or an average. So as standard deviations increase, so does volatility and the number of potential occurrences or the amount of potential variation. In this case, our variation subject is the strike prices. So as we can see here, let's take a look at the blue curve first, because that's the first one I described. That blue curve represents high volatility. So higher volatility represents a wider range of potential occurrences. You can see that, right? It's a wider range of potential occurrences. So there's elevated potential fluctuation and lower price stability. A wider range of potential occurrences represents a greater degree of risk. And a greater degree of risk means higher options prices because prices liable to change rapidly and unpredictably. That's what this blue line is meant to represent. Lower volatility, on the other hand, that's this pink line here. It's pretty narrow. This is considered a narrow distribution curve. So lower volatility represents a smaller range of potential occurrences. So there's higher price stability. A smaller range of potential occurrences represents a lower degree of risk, and a lower degree of risk generally means lower options prices. This is useful because it can be used by traders to understand when prices are high and when they're low. So it's extremely important to consider this before you make any investment. And now let's get into the two major types of volatility. You have implied volatility, which is the measure of market sentiment, how the market participants feel about it, regarding the security's potential movement. And this is based on the pricing. So it's based on how much people are willing to pay for it essentially. In general, the higher the implied volatility, the higher the options premium. Seeing potential movement is useful when deciding how much risk to take. Historical volatility is the next one, and it attempts to measure a security's potential price movement based on the ranges of price movement that a security has historically shown. Seeing how volatility has moved is useful for comparing it to the potential movement to see if market participants are now willing to pay higher prices or lower prices for something than they have before. So the implied measures the potential variation or fluctuation, and the historical measures what has already happened. So let's get into two more. These are two that I mainly use, and these are super easy to use and find on Tastyworks: implied volatility rank and implied volatility percentile. The implied volatility rank, let's do that one first. It shows whether the current implied volatility is high or low relative to its own high and low over the past year. With Tastyworks, it's easy to find, but just check with your broker if they calculate it longer than a year. But Tastyworks does a year. For example, an IV rank of 10% means that the current IV is low 10% relative to its IV over the past year, that range. So the limitations of it, though, a one-time major huge spike in volatility, in other words, a huge uptick in volatility, could skew this number, or a huge drop could skew this number, just because it could be like a one-time thing, you know? So instead of just a gradual number. So that's where I like implied volatility percentile a bit more. Even though I use IVR, I use implied volatility percentile even more. Again, this one is on Tastyworks. I put a note right here that you can see. I also put the formulas for each one, but you won't have to do it if you have a Tastyworks platform or if you have Thinkorswim. I think they have it up there as well. I mean, I know they have it up there as well. So IV percentile shows the percentage of time or days in a year that the symbol's implied volatility has been below where its current implied volatility is. So how often has this current IV been below, like what's the percentage of time that the IV has been below where it is currently? That's another way of putting it. My personal favorite, because it's an average that looks at more than the year high and low. It literally looks at every single day, implied volatility every single day. So an example is, and if you see that an IV percentile of 70%, that means that 70% of the time, this symbol's IV was lower than what it currently is. And this formula helps to understand that how many number of days in the past year was the implied volatility under the current volatility. And then you divide that by the number of trading days in that time frame that you chose. We chose a year, so 1 year is 252 trading days. Okay, and that is all. I know that was a quick basic video, but that's the point of my channel. Adults don't always have time to sit through the long videos. So thanks for watching. I hope this helps somebody.